Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's PMI Friday webinar. Sorry about going dark there. We obviously had a few technical issues. Glad to see that Sean has managed to resolve all of those. So this afternoon's webinar is called What You See Is All There Is, and is being presented by Sean Buckland. I'm Susanna Clark, and I'm going to be facilitating the session today. As you can see at the top of the screen, we've just released a brand new episode for our podcast, Leading for Business Excellence. You can find it on all popular podcast apps. And this month, we're delighted to be talking to David Callahan. David is former Senior VP at Oracle EMEA, President of the British Quality Foundation until 2019, and currently a B2B business leader in both executive and non-executive roles. David has some fascinating stories about his journey through leadership and the role of the leader. So please, if you get a chance, do look out for it and come back to us with any feedback that you may have. So back to today, I'm going to be running the Q&A desk today. So we're going to be using that throughout the presentation. You can use the Q&A panel to communicate with us, pose any questions, give any feedback. You can also use the chat if you prefer that. I will then share any of your questions, any of your comments with Sean as we go. Today's webinar is also being recorded, and we're going to be sending the recording to all of our registered participants at the beginning of next week. As usual, we're also broadcasting live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. So to those of you who are joining us on those live feeds, we do welcome you. And in the future, if you want to participate in any of our polls or also receive the recording via email, then you can register in future at pmi.co.uk/webinars. We're going to be sending a short voice to the customer survey at the end of the session, and I'd be really grateful for your feedback. We do review every week all of your feedback, and in particular, your suggestions for future topics, and we build our schedule based on those. So thank you for all of your support with that. And now I'd like to hand over to Sean.
Thank you very much, Suze. So just get straight to the welcome page. Fascinating topic today. One of my favorite areas, which is blending what we're beginning to learn about the psychology of change and psychology of human beings with Lean Six Sigma, which is about how we go about trying to implement change in a structured, planned, and controlled way. So very exciting topic for me. I'm really enjoying sharing these thoughts with you today. What we're going to cover is what you see is all there is. So what is it? What do we mean by that? And then following on from that, why can't people see the waste that's all around them? Not you. I'm sure the fact that you're on this webinar, you're probably one of the people who's already maybe more advanced in this area, and maybe you share that same feeling that I do sometimes, which is, why can't people see it? It's everywhere. And so we're going to look into what's driving that factor. And then we're going to look into, why do we even need Lean Six Sigma projects? What are they actually doing from the point of view of this psychology side of things? And then looking into why Lean Six Sigma training alone is not enough for us to develop effective skills as Lean Six Sigma practitioners. LSS, forgive me if I just say LSS from here on in. Okay, so that's what we've got to cover in the next 45 minutes. So looking forward to covering some of this with you. Please do fire comments and questions in as we go. Keeps it alive, keeps it interesting, keeps me on my toes. So what you see is all there is, or as you will hear me refer to it throughout this as WYSIATI, which is a rather strange shortcut for it, WYSIATI. And we'll kick off with our very first poll, if that's all right with you, Suze. This question is about, what's your current level of familiarity with what's called behavioural economics, or sometimes known as nudge theory? So maybe you're on the call and on the webinar with us, you're already an active practitioner looking to see how you can use it for improvement. Great, fantastic. Maybe you've got some good knowledge of the theory, but not necessarily applied it yet. Maybe familiar with some of the terminology, maybe vaguely heard of it, or maybe this is brand news to you. So we've got the poll live now. Thank you very much.
That's all right. Yes, so that poll is out there. And just to remind you, it's about your familiarity with behavioural economics and nudge theory. When I first thought about this, I thought, goodness, nudge theory, that I'd never heard of that before, although I had heard of behavioural economics.
Yes, yes. We even have government funded a thing called the Nudge Unit, believe it or not, that is designed specifically to use these principles to encourage us to vote in the ways and to do things that we're meant to do as a population.
Goodness
And
me.
you can imagine some of the ethical questions that this raises.
I'm sure. Okay, I can see that nearly everyone has placed their responded to the poll. So if you haven't yet chosen your question, your answer rather, please do so. And I'll give you another couple of seconds and then I will end the poll and share the results with everybody.
Okay. Fantastic.
Okay, so just for those people who are on live stream with us, the question should be still on your screen. We've had nobody respond that they're an active practitioner, nor have we had anyone say they have a good knowledge of the theory. I feel like I'm in good company now, Sean, thank goodness. 29% of our audience say they're familiar with the terms and roughly what they mean. 36% have vaguely heard of it, and 36% are not familiar at all, which is great, actually.
Well, it's certainly a relief to me. I won't get too many technical hard questions. That's brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your answers. That's interesting. I think this is early days, and it doesn't surprise me to see results like this. And if today's topic interests you enough to follow up, I've got some specific early reading that you can go and follow up on, and there's various behavioral economics groups and so forth who get together to discuss these kinds of things. But I'll tell you why I first got interested in this. It was through a dear colleague of mine who is a psychologist, and he realized that more and more of the time when we're trying to implement change, it's very often our own humanity that lets us down, our sort of preconditioned biases, as I'll come on to. And so he started looking into it, and I've basically learned most of what I know from him. And it's his full-time profession, is helping companies be more effective in their communication with their customers, more effective in the way they engage with their staff. So it's got an awful lot in common with Lean, but coming at it through the processes of what's going on in our brains, as opposed to what's going on our factory floors or our IT systems.
Brilliant.
So there
Thanks,
we go.
Sean.
Fantastic.
Thanks everyone for contributing, and
there we go.
Back to you.
Thank you. Right. Okay. So that's brilliant. So moving on. So here we go. This is the core starter text, if you like, in this area, written by an amazing man by the name of Daniel Kahneman. There you can see him getting a Presidential Medal of Freedom, but he was also a Nobel Prize winner as well. And he pulled together a lot of research over many, many decades to just try and answer the question, why do we behave irrationally sometimes? Why do we do some of the things that are self-limiting, self-harming? And then this book summarizes decades of really good quality research. So I'll come back to it again. I'll remind you of it at the end of the webinar. And I want to jump straight into what he was saying. And underneath this all, what he discovered and what he writes about is this concept of System 1 and System 2. And System 1 is known as System 1 because it's the one we use the most. It's the one we use as a matter of choice first, etc. And there's good reason for that. It's really fast. In fact, we're beginning to be able to measure it. It's about 10,000 times faster than System 2. It's unconscious. We don't even know it's there. It's just doing the work behind the scenes. It's automatic. We don't have to stop and think. That's why it's fast. It just handles everyday decisions for us all the time. So if I were to ask you to think about walking upstairs, you go, well, why? I just walk upstairs. I don't think about it. And actually, if you try to walk upstairs while thinking about it, right, how do I lift my leg? How do I shape my feet? And so on. Where do I put my hands? You'd probably end up falling over. So System 1's really, really good, but it is fundamentally prone to error. And so we have this thing called System 2. System 2 is our thought processes, our conscious thinking processes, and they're dreadfully slow and they take high energy. So listening to a webinar on a Friday afternoon, high effort, very slow. You get the idea. This is System 2 land we're in right now, and it's really good at being solving complex decisions, things where you have to really work things through carefully. And it is potentially reliable provided you feed it the right data. Again, you can see the link to Six Sigma coming in here. So if we give it the right data, it can make very, very good complex decisions. And this is how we advance science and our understanding of the universe and all of these things that we're very good at. But it's this high effort versus automatic. You can see straight away why System 1 wins over System 2 time and time again. So what System 1 and System 2 do is they are how we make our choices in life. And System 1 is so successful because it has a whole series, what in technical language is called a cognitive bias, a bias in the way that we think and process information. And these biases are incredibly useful because they're shortcuts, and use the shortcut to get you through the day. Yeah, you don't have to stop and think about every single thing you have to do. You just wouldn't get anywhere. So these cognitive biases are incredibly useful. They're also the things that lead to error. So let's just practice one of them. There are many of them, but this is, and again, I recommend the book to you, and maybe future webinars will come on to some of the others and how they link to Six Sigma. But I picked on this one first because I think in some ways it's the big one for Lean Six Sigma. And let's talk about jumping to some conclusions. So there you can see some characters that I've put up for you, and hopefully you can read those nice and clearly. And great, fantastic, you've read them. Now I'm going to set you up here. I'm going to warn you in advance. I'm going to set you up and I'm going to show you some more characters, but I want you to be honest with yourselves. When I put the next set of characters up, just read them out in your mind and see what characters you come up with. Okay. So, unless you've done this exercise before, you have probably read on the left-hand side, it goes A, B, C. And on the right, depending on how you read it, you've either read 12, 13, and 14, or 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. Or if people are really into maths, 121,314. So, hopefully, that's what you've discovered. Now let's look at the conclusion that you jumped to. Can anybody spot the difference between those characters? Any comments in chat on this one?
Yes, please do put your comments on chat. And I know when I first did this exercise with Sean, I saw 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. And funnily enough, I didn't even see it as 12, 13, 14. I just saw it as a straight run of numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've got somebody from chat saying, okay, the first, but somebody who read the first as A13C. So that's
right,
interesting.
Yep. Okay. But if I put them both up at the same time, which maybe I'll do next time, it's more likely. But yeah, anyway, hopefully
and then
you can
they
see
read
the point.
and 12B14, which I think is also interesting.
Interesting, isn't it?
That is interesting. Yes,
isn't it just interesting?
Thank you.
But okay, we've just got an awkward bunch with us today, Suze, obviously. But the crucial thing here is we do not know what either of those actually is. Whether you jump to A13C or ABC, you jumped to a conclusion. And usually what happens is people read ABC because that's the context around it. And they usually read 12, 13, 14 because that's the context around it. But every single one of us is slightly different. So the thing is, what we're doing is we take the information around us to fill in the bits that we don't know. And that's why we're talking about jumping to conclusions. So now you know that I'm setting you up. I'm going to give you a scenario. So when you read this scenario, what I like to do is imagine the scenario in the real world and what it might look like. So here we go. Here's the scenario. Anne approached the bank. Yeah. Now, thinking about this, what do you think Anne approached?
And again, feel free to put your answers in the chat.
People feel free to approach. Yeah, and be honest here. It's what was the first thing you thought of? Give you the time to write a few comments.
Yeah, we've got some thinkers as well amongst us.
Yeah, it's because I've told people. Yeah. The chances are,
Okay,
yeah, she's
I've
going to
got
rob
someone.
it. Yeah. Okay. There we go. All right. So here's the thing. What most people will do, I can't speak for you individually, but what most people will do is they will experience, because the thing that is most familiar to them when we think about Anne approaching the bank is the high street bank, where you go to maybe put in some money, take some money out, discuss a mortgage, that kind of thing. But if I provided you different context and said Anne rode closer to the bank, you'd probably have a very different picture. You'd see it being the bank of a river, or Anne the farmer approached the bank where the railway ran through her field. Suddenly you've got a totally different type of bank again. So you can see here that what we're doing into our brains is we jump to conclusions based on what makes sense, what is reasonable, and what is our familiar experience. If you've never visited a high street bank, but you live your life living on the river, you would have naturally jumped to it being the bank of the river, and so on. So that's the thinking behind jumping to conclusions. There's nothing wrong with it, because most of the time it's exactly how we survive. Without it, we would be stuck. But the problem is those times where we're wrong, when that really is A13C or 12B14. That's when it goes wrong for us. So I want to introduce you to Professor Moriarty here. Professor Moriarty, some of you might already be aware that Professor Moriarty was Sherlock Holmes, the consulting detective's arch nemesis. So while Sherlock Holmes was busy trying to use his clever brain to outwit all the criminals, Professor Moriarty was using his clever brain to try and conduct the perfect crimes, or enable others to conduct the perfect crimes. He never conducted them himself personally in the original books. But Professor Moriarty has this mundane criminal brother who I think is responsible for far more harm and waste than all the criminals of the world ever put together. And his name is WYSIATI. And WYSIATI, as we covered before, stands for what you see is all there is. And that's the summary that Daniel Kahneman uses to explain why we jump to conclusions. That's the heart of this. Daniel Kahneman explains it like this, is because when we look at a situation, when we experience situations, our brain takes in the information, and then it fills in all the rest using automatic responses 10,000 times faster than we can even consciously be aware of, and then fills in those gaps. And because it then creates what feels like a complete picture, we then think we have the complete picture. We jump to our conclusions and we carry on nicely unconcerned that we've just made a whole load of serious mistakes in our assumptions. This is not just green belt problem. This is everybody problem. I was just working with a group of black belts last week, Suze, and we almost ended up in an argument with this, because one of the people on the black belt training was absolutely convinced that every assumption they made about how the management system could work was absolutely just a matter of fact, and it couldn't possibly work any other way, and therefore there was no point trying to change it, because that's all they'd ever seen, and so they had no belief system to say alternative available.
In my experience, Sean, that doesn't just happen in our work life as well. I know some people in my social life who feel that way too.
Yeah. And here's the thing, you can't stop it from happening. Yeah, you can't stop it from happening. All you can do is be aware that it is happening.
Yes.
So let's now start tying this into the world of Lean Six Sigma. And I want to talk to you about how waste becomes invisible. So what happens here, I'm about to show you a picture of the storeroom of a client of mine that I worked with many years ago now, and they used to install kitchens, and they had a spare parts store. And I'm going to show you a small part of the spare parts store. Those of you who are familiar with 5S exercises will know exactly what picture you're about to see. And here it is. So, anybody got one of these at work? Hopefully not anymore. Hopefully these are a thing of the past, except our colleague Damien was showing pictures just like this only a couple of weeks ago. Anyhow, the point is this, is I asked the people whether, for example, they had problems finding spare parts, or when they found the spare parts, maybe sometimes they were damaged beyond use. And they said, it was funny you mentioned that. How did you possibly know that? Because I'm some kind of wizard? No, I know how to spot problems when I see them. So the crucial thing here is when I asked them why they chose to store their spare parts like this, they said, well, that's how we've always done it. Maybe we've heard that expression before. And the problem is then, is after a while, it's what we come to expect. Remember those times where you're new into the job, 6 months in, you're suddenly thinking, all right, what was it was so strange? But for those first few weeks, you're going, God, this is crazy. This is bonkers. Why on earth do we do it this way? But by the time you got the position, the authority, the confidence to ask the question, it's now what you expect. In other words, the brain is trained to just learn to live with it, to expect it, and then we stop seeing it. So we jump to the conclusion that it must be there because it always has been. But what if we flip that on its head? What if we were to make the assumption that all waste, once identified, and it is identifiable, we know this, then we could eliminate it. So what I'm about to do is show you a very brief video here from a couple of years ago. Some of you might have seen this before, where a huge 30-meter sinkhole, 30-meter deep sinkhole appeared just almost over day, just went bonk, and in this main street in Japan. And the Japanese had a different view about this to us. Just throw into the chat room, anybody think how long in your respective countries, some of you're in the UK, some of you might be somewhere else, in your respective countries, it'd be lovely to see a few guesses. How long do you think it would take typically to repair a 30-meter sinkhole that's just appeared on a main street? Anybody want to have a guess? How long they think it would take?
We've got somebody from the UK suggest a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yes, if the potholes in my own road or anything to go by.
That's right. Yeah,
that's absolutely
yeah. But I bet it's got
right.
a white line around it.
Yeah.
6 months unless you're next to Parliament. Yep. Okay.
Not
good.
that we're jaundiced at all, you know that, Sean.
No. It's still there. Awesome. I'm loving this. This is brilliant. Keep them coming. All right. Let's just watch this video for a moment. It's quite staggering. And by the way, the pothole's about to get worse first. Jaw dropping, hey? 48 hours and it was repaired. Took a little bit longer to get all the full safety checks, a couple of days later. But the incredible thing is they just got on with fixing the problem, no delay. And unfortunately, Susan and I were discussing earlier about the hospital that was built in China. I didn't get a chance to look up the actual detail of that, but there was an example of using lean construction methods to build a hospital, and I think they built the entire hospital in something like 48 hours. It was absolutely crazy. Yeah, did they get to the root cause of the issue? They had a working road at the end that was considered safe, so that's all I know on the matter. It's certainly staggering what you can do when you eliminate the waste from a process. Oops, sorry, that's just showing again. And of course, we know that we train people up when they come onto a white, yellow, green belt, whatever training program. When they come to learn these things, one of the key things we're teaching people to do is to spot the waste. And we use things like Tim Wood, or in PMI we use downtime, because that includes the 8th waste, the non-utilized talent. But basically, what we're talking about is we train people up to spot waste. You think about, why do we need to do that? It's because we've lost the ability to see it. We've not lost it. We've lost the ability to trust that we're seeing something that is waste. And so that we use this structured process to re-engage our system 2 thinking, to make it a conscious thing to go and look for. Yeah, and that's part of the magic of Lean Six Sigma. It's using system 2 thinking to go and find the waste so we can go and get rid of it. In other words, looking for waste is a pure system 2 task. That is, until you've done it so much that it becomes a natural system 1 task. And I have no doubt that some, if not most of you on this call, are very, very good at spotting waste. But the question is when did you last consciously go looking for it? And have you started yourself? I know that I have. Every now and again, I force myself back into, right, I'm just going to go and do a waste walk, even if it's just around my own house, just to keep that sort of conscious process going and alive, stop me getting used to things. So that's an interesting thing for you. Do you do that for yourselves or anything like that? Keep yourself in that system 2 space. So why do we need Lean Six Sigma? Well, let's run another poll. I'm going to talk to you first about daily continuous improvement as opposed to Lean Six Sigma. I know there's a very interesting grey space between them, but what I'm talking about here is just the daily continuous activity that, if implemented, is happening in all of the teams right across the business on a daily basis, in theory. So I'm just interested in your organizations. Would you say that the daily continuous improvement is well implemented and it's systematically achieving change? It's patchy, you've got some, but other areas are not so much. It's officially in place, but you're not really getting much value out of it in terms of improvement. Your organizations have tried it, maybe more than once, but there's not really any traction with the process, or actually it's not even been attempted. So that's the next poll. It's open now. Thank you very much, Suze.
That's all right. So yes, that's launched for everybody. And just to remind people who are on our live streams, feel free to put your answers in the chat of the live stream, and we'll include your feedback. One of our live stream watchers on LinkedIn was asking about what happened to the road in the first place. What went wrong with the building process? Again, I don't think we actually know the answer to that, do we?
No, I'm afraid I don't.
Sure,
it's a great question.
Yes, indeed.
But obviously, it was the Japanese news that followed it. Guardian just picked up on the video.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so last couple of moments.
Oh no, we're still getting some answers in.
Yeah. Nearly there, I think. Okay, another couple of seconds and then I'll end and share the poll. Okay. So what I can see is, again, for those of you who are joining us on our live stream and can't see the poll, we don't have anyone who has selected that the systems have been well implemented, systematically achieving change. 50% have said they're patchy, consistent in some areas, flaky in others. 25% officially in place, but not really getting much change. 8% tried at least once, but have received no traction. And 17% have not attempted to implement. Okay. Is that the sort of distribution you're expecting, Sean?
Well, I'm actually encouraged by that, to be honest with you. It's nice to see that at least there is some consistency of continuous improvement in some areas for half of our audience, which is absolutely great news. I'm sure if we'd done the same poll even just 5 years ago, we would have seen a lot more tried but no tractions and a few officiallys. And most not attempted. So I think that I find that personally very encouraging. So good to hear, really.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, super stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Right, so Why am I talking about continuous improvement first? Well, there is a major barrier to developing a continuous improvement culture. And that is it's to all the level of Lean Six Sigma we do, whether it's green belt, black belt, whatever, ultimately it's got to go back into daily operations. And it's daily operations, which is where the biggest opportunity therefore lies, because that's where all of the problems are ultimately that we're needing to fix. So we can't stop for running projects all the time and then just letting things decay away. So what the long-term success of Lean Six Sigma is based upon establishing a continuous improvement culture. But there is this one key barrier to it. And guess what? It's Moriarty's mundane brother, WYSIATI, has turned up again. I'm not saying it's the only barrier, but it is a key barrier. And why is that? Because people will only be able to succeed with continuous improvement if they can first see the opportunities for the improvement around them. And to do that, they have to have internalized and become system 1 level capable at seeing the waste. And that means they need to have spent the time in that high energy, hard work system 2 space, practicing looking for the waste. So continuous improvement is ultimately dependent upon people seeing the waste automatically and then logging it for improvement. That's what generates the continuous improvement culture. We see the waste, and then on top of that, we've got the empowerment that the continuous improvement processes, tools, visual management, etc. All of those things are brilliant, but most of the time what I see happen is, including some work I've been asked to do, so I'm speaking from personal experience here on this as well, is being asked to put in the CI tools but not equip people with the ability to see what needs to improve. And therefore, all that people experience instead is just yet another demand on their time for another meeting, instead of recognizing it's ultimately the tool that's there for them to drive improvement in their workspaces. But as I say, until people could see the waste, automatically, it's very difficult to get CI to work. Okay. So now, therefore, we're probably going to need some Lean Six Sigma projects. And the beauty of Lean Six Sigma, it is designed specifically to keep us in system 2 thinking mode. This is why it's set up in a project format. This is why it's got the structured activities that we need to do. And it's why the nature of the activities are what they are. It's also why it's such darn hard work. Consider this: when we're setting up the charter's purpose is to make sure we've taken the time to stop and think, is this even a worthwhile project to run before we run it, amongst many other things. We engage the team of the people who do the work because they're the people who experience the work. They're the ones who've got that knowledge. And once we've engaged their system 2s, then they become the biggest, best advocates for the changes. We use real data, not just the random stuff or arbitrary mashed together stuff that makes it look good for the month-end report. We're using real data. Now that's hard work, but it gives us our system 2 thrives on data. It's searching for data all the time. Even the people who don't like maths, just changes the nature of how they use it. So the root cause analysis process is pure system 2. I'll come on to that one in a bit more detail soon. Pareto analysis allows us to focus our system 2 thinking. Where should we pay our attention most? Where should we give our attention to in the greatest detail? Plan, do, study, act is the antidote to system 1. It exists precisely because of system 1 being the problem of jumping to conclusions. Plan, do, study, act. Some of you might use plan, do, check, act, PDCA. I mean the same thing in this context. So plan, do, study, act, check, act. What we're looking here to do is make sure that we're always testing our ideas against predicted theories in order to make sure we stay in the learning mode, not the jump to conclusion mode. And then, of course, we standardize after improvement rather than just trying to make standardization the source of improvement. And that's another example of taking the time to do the thinking and the learning before agreeing the standard. And of course, at the end of the project, we've got that lessons learned. So in other words, how can we improve the process of improving the processes? So all of these things, these are just a subset of the things that most, if not every, Six Sigma project will go through. And all of them are good examples of being forced into system 2 space. And that's really powerful stuff. But are all of our Lean Six Sigma projects effective? No, they're not. So let's have a look. So I'm just going to pick on root cause analysis, as I said a few seconds ago. Root cause analysis, I think, is a really interesting example from within this. And I'd like to run a third poll, please. What is your experience of the outcomes of root cause analyses? So answer number one, not being involved in one, so no comment to make. 2, they're a waste of time. 3, found the results you expected, but at least that's confirmation. That's nice. 4, got some useful additional insights. 5, identified previously unknown underlying causes. Now, I know some of you have done many of them, so just use what's a typical outcome. Okay, Suze, over to you.
Thanks, that's been launched. I do think it's interesting how our audience, both on the webinar today and also on the live stream platforms, are all talking about root cause. So you've definitely picked a good subject here for this poll.
Yeah.
It's as if you had insight into this stuff, Sean. So keep your answers coming. And again, anyone on live stream. So we've got a couple of votes coming in on the live stream too. Thank you. Okay. And I'll just give you a last couple of seconds to place your answer. And then I shall share the results.
Okay.
Okay, so interesting. With our audience on the webinar, we have 8% who have not been involved in one. I've got somebody who, sorry, our audience on the webinar have said, I've got 0% have actually thinking it's a waste of time, but I've got people on live stream who do think it is a waste of time. So that's interesting. 23% found the results that they'd expected. 38% got some useful insights, and 31% identified previously unknown underlying causes.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much for your results. That's really appreciated. And I was about to say, it's encouraging to hear that nobody found it a waste of time, but you've spoiled that for me now, Suze.
I'm sorry.
I am sorry on behalf of the personal people who wrote that.
Yes.
That is genuinely a shame to hear. Unfortunately,
I think some of what you're going to talk about next might be the answer to that question.
Yeah. Because unfortunately, more and more, and I'm even talking about talking to people who are Greenbelt level trained, you know, I am seeing a substantial amount of people who are fundamentally mistaking direct causes and root causes, and that's what I want to talk about. So I want you to just have a look at this, because whilst the whole of the Lean Six Sigma process is designed to try and protect us from our System 1 thinking, our System 1 is still our System 1, and it likes to be boss. So let's imagine we're all in a room doing a root cause analysis together. Did we only get the convenient team together? Or did we think really hard about where the cause analysis might go, and therefore invite some potential other people who might have a view on it? Worst case still, did we just try and do it on our own? Did we stop when we hit something that just seemed to make sense, like, oh, the IT is not good enough, or we didn't train people well enough, or, oh, it's the way that the building was designed, or something like that? If we're stopping at the point where there's something we don't like that just seems logical, that's classic System 1 jumping to conclusions again. Did we stop if we're going, oh, well, actually, we don't know, so it's outside of our team, it's outside of our knowledge, so, well, there's nothing we can do about it, you know, and so we just stopped that at that point? Or we stopped if there's something fundamental about it that makes us think we can't do anything about it? All of these are classic symptoms of System 1 thinking that can totally ruin a root cause analysis exercise. And it means that you won't get to the fundamentals. Whereas a System 2 root cause analysis will not stop until you have found the genuine fundamentals. And what do we mean by fundamentals? It's a law of physics. It's a law of nature. It's a law of the land. It's a limitation to existing known technology. Yeah. Until we're down at that real fundamental level, So working with a training organization one time and saying, oh, well, our customers, it's quite a few years ago, but it really struck me as a good example. At that point, the training company had some customers who had access to the internet and some who didn't at that point. And they'll say, well, we send out our training brochures on the internet. And I'm saying, well, why don't these people turn up? Well, they don't have the internet, so they don't know about the training. And they go, well, yeah, but they're still your customers. You're meant to be providing training to them. They're meant to know what's going on. And they say, well, they should have the internet. I say, well, it's not your business. Your business is to provide, let them know what training there is. Why don't you have a solution for them, given that they don't have the internet, given that they aren't your customers? So I know that's obviously a very old case study, but it's an example of the way the thinking can just change. If you keep the root cause analysis going, you can say, well, we haven't found the fundamental issue. And the fundamental issue in that case was that they had assumed that it was the customer's job to find out about what training they were providing, which of course was absolutely not the case. And we then turned that around. So the next thing is we don't stop until all the potential sources of common cause variation have been explained by the fundamentals. So don't just stop when we found one root cause. Keep going until every piece of common cause variation is understood in terms of its root cause. Because the problem about common cause variation is the root causes interact with each other. So we need to understand them all so that we're not just pressing down one while pushing up on another. And remember, root cause analysis itself simply generates theories. And then we must take those root causes and validate their genuine root causes with data before we press forward with our designs. And ultimately, therefore, we need to remain open to the fact that our root cause analysis, our theories, might be wrong, and we need to come back and revisit them. And unfortunately, pretty much every Greenbelt project that I've been coaching recently, we've had to go back and say, no, we need to redo the root cause analysis. You don't yet know what they are. Okay.
I think back to what you were saying earlier, Sean. This topic of we are problem solvers and we want to find an answer, even if the answer is not the right answer. Just any answer will do, and that's what I see. In root cause analysis, people are thrilled to have an answer, and that's good enough, and so that inclination to potentially stop, and the other piece about the system 2 being much harder work. People naturally resist it. Look, we've got an answer. Can't we just go with that?
That's exactly right, Suze. That's exactly what I'm talking about. System 1 wants to be boss.
Yeah. Interesting.
And the problem is it feels nice when we let it be.
Yes.
Because life's so much simpler.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And these WYSIATI biases happen right across the improvement cycle. They help us develop poor scopes. We don't select the right or the complete team. We dump everything onto the green belts, assuming they can handle it themselves. We only use the data that's easily available. We fit our analysis to what fits our worldview. That's bringing in a second cognitive bias called confirmation bias on top of the WYSIATI. Root cause analysis we just talked about, looking for it to be the problem you want it to be, like you just said, Suze. Again, more confirmation bias fitting in with that one as well. The first solution is the only solution, and that's the great one, and therefore we don't need to do PDSA and so on, and then run off training, or right, we've trained people, they should be following the new process. All of this, and ultimately just not, thinking we're done when we finish the project, even if it was highly successful, you'll never have fixed everything. All of these things are WYSIATI biases, and with a few of them, a bit of confirmation bias thrown in as well. So just be aware that right across, even though Lean Six Sigma is there to protect you against the System 1 biases, the System 1 biases are still there, and they can mess up our projects spectacularly. So the limitations of our training, I'm just going to finish up on this topic here. So when we're training our green belts up, the problem is the people in the training room are listening for the information they already know, which means they're less likely to hear the new stuff. That's just part of how it is. It's what you're doing right now. It's what I do when I attend a webinar. It's the same thing. That's just System 1 in action. We also, if we hear something we don't understand, we turn it into something simpler, even if it's wrong. I'm not going to make any comments about large-scale referendum and something like that, because that might get political, but those are a good example of trying to turn something incredibly complex into yes, no, or leave remain type discussions. Okay, system one means we pick and choose without understanding the risks. So, oh, well, I like doing root cause analysis, but I understand that to mean 5 whys. So I'll do a 5 whys. That's pretty cool. But this whole control charting thing, yeah, I don't really get that. So I'll kind of leave that bit out. I would literally have been training some black belts recently who had forgotten control charts exist. That absolutely terrifying to me. Okay, and system one tries to fit the new knowledge we've got into existing paradigms. So I was talking to a black belt recently, and they were just saying, look, I'm very good at my black belt stuff. I do all this really good stuff. It's really good, but there's nothing you could do about the managers. It's like, no, that's fundamentally wrong. Managers are people, and they want to do a good job, and they run processes. The management processes can be improved as well. Okay, not saying it's easy, but it can be done. And then this is a classic. Now I will pick on the managers. The system one wants the training to be one and done. Oh, you've been on the training. Now get on and transform our business, please, by next Friday. Yeah, that's system one thinking again, not taking the time to understand what people have actually been trained to do. So the logic that I'm trying to explain to us here is, even if we trained people perfectly every single time, which is what we aspire to do, system one means that when they go back into the workplace, they've got an awful lot of learning still to do. And they will only do that learning if they stay in system two mindset, which is, I've got some basics under my belt, but I've still got most of my learning yet to come. And that requires conscious effort. Otherwise, it simply does not work. So, in summary, thanks for your time. It's been really great having you. I just want to summarize with these few points. Number one, switch on your system two and make sure you switch it on every time you need to. You can't leave it switched on all the time. Your batteries will run flat. But switch it on in very planned, deliberate ways, and then acknowledge you're in system two space for that duration. Don't expect it to be easy. Like any skill, it takes a huge amount of conscious effort to become effortless. Yeah, think about learning to play the piano or some such high skill. And we do want the shortcut to the better. Lean Six Sigma is the shortcut to better. And therefore, we need to solve the problems that everybody else jumped over when they were jumping to conclusions. That's what makes us special in this industry. Of course, last word to Deming, your system is perfectly designed to give you the results you are currently getting. And that applies to system one and system two as well. So, summary of key points. Humans make most of their decisions using system one thinking. Anything else would be impossible to manage. System two thinking is required to find better solutions to the solutions we've currently got, i.e. the ones that are creating the problems. Identifying waste around us requires us to use system two, at least until we've retrained our brains. Continuous improvement can work reliably from the point where people can see the waste all around them, but we're going to struggle to implement it beforehand. So that's a key priority to fix if you want continuous improvement to work. And then your Lean Six Sigma projects can create the dedicated time and focus for you to be in system two mode. And they therefore help protect us from our friend WYSIATI. But even when we're using those methods, WYSIATI means our system one will still want to take over. And therefore we should always be watching out for it. Can't switch it off, you just have to be aware for it. So remind you again, great book here with loads of more hints, really, really good information to help you improve your own ability to manage your team, your change work, train other people, and ultimately become a bit more understanding of people's occasional stupidities. So on that note, I think I will pass back to you, Suze.
Thanks, Sean. I have to say, a huge thank you for me. This has been fascinating working with you on this. I've learned loads, and I'm looking forward to developing my understanding of this in greater detail. I think it's a really fabulous topic. So thank you again for your time today and in your time preparing for today's webinar.
Thank you, Suze.
you can see on your screens, it's just a gentle reminder about our Leading for Business Excellence podcast. You can find it on our Knowledge Hub, which is on pmi.co.uk/Knowledge Hub. Also, you can find it on any of your regular podcast apps. Our November webinar schedule is available now as well. So all dates are out. We've got some fantastic topics coming up, really current. So managing the speed of change, leading virtual teams, agile improvement. These are all based, a lot of the topics based on feedback from you guys. So thank you for that. And also some good improvement classics, such as opportunities hidden in your value stream. So finally, do look out for the Voice of the Customer survey that will be coming your way, and we will be sending you the recording at the beginning of next week. Don't hesitate to make any suggestions, share your feedback with us. We do like to hear from you. And so that brings us to the end of today's webinar. On behalf of PMI, Sean, once again, thank you, Sean. But on behalf of Sean and myself, I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone for joining us, and do have a really safe and a really relaxing weekend. Thanks very much.